Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 2021 Safe Routes to School Infrastructure Program launch. My name is Diane Hansen, and I'm the Program Director. A few reminders about the session. Please put all the questions in the chat, and we will address them during the Q&A. To see text captions on the screen, please enable live transcript using your Zoom menu. And lastly, this session is being recorded and will be on the Safe Routes to School website shortly. Today, I'm joined by Derek Cravat, Manager of MPO Activities for MassDOT and Safe Routes to School Program Coordinator. Today's agenda covers a brief introduction to Safe Routes to School. Keep in mind that we will sometimes use the acronym SRTS throughout this presentation just to save on some words. And we will review the funding program and eligibility requirements, the application instructions, and how the application will be evaluated. Lastly, we'll take questions live and in the chat. And I'm going to ask Leon to put a PDF copy of the presentation in the chat. This will have all the hyperlinks to resources that we'll be discussing today. Thanks, Leon. And I think a few times throughout the presentation, Leon, if you could drop that in there. I know that when folks join a little bit late, sometimes they don't have access to those earlier documents. Okay, so let's jump right in with a Safe Routes to School program overview. Our goal is to increase safe walking, biking, and rolling among elementary and middle school students. We take a whole community approach to this program and focus on both healthy and safe transportation. Many of you are aware that we use the 6 E's of Safe Routes to School to guide our program. This is a national framework. 5 of these E's are considered non-infrastructure and are the main focus of our work with the schools. The 6th E, engineering, is why we're here today. Here are some examples of the services we provide to our partner schools and communities. This is by no means inclusive of everything we do, but it should give you a good overview of how we break out our programming by E. For education, we provide training to students as well as educators. Under encouragement are 3 flagship days, including iWalk in October, Winter Walk in February, and Massachusetts Walk, Bike, and Roll to School in May are great and popular encouragement activities, and you can sign up for those on our website. Our parent guardian travel surveys under evaluation are available in 9 languages and help schools see how many students are currently walking and biking and what the potential is to increase the number based on student address information. Under engagement, I want to highlight our new networking calls we launched this school year. Our next one is coming up in November, and it provides a forum for SRTS practitioners around the state to get together and talk about what works in their community. Each call is structured around a specific topic, and this next call is focused on how to increase parent guardian participation in our program. Our last E is equity, which we consider our all-encompassing E. Our equity resources include our Inclusion and Abilities Guide, policy support for school districts and municipalities, and equity strategies for school framework. In order to receive support from our program, you must be a Safe Routes to School partner. And I'll mention in the next few slides, in order to apply for infrastructure, you also need to have been a partner for at least 6 months as of today's date. There are a few ways to check this out. One is to go to the main page of the Safe Routes website and view the PDF list of partners. Or you can also go to our evaluation page and click on the link for the dashboard. If your school is listed, you're a partner. If you are not a partner, you can also enroll using a quick online form available on the main page. The reason I mention all of these services by E is that the school and community's engagement with Safe Routes is really important when applying for this grant, and you must be an actively engaged school partner. So you're probably wondering where all those resources I just mentioned. Well, here are the links. So they're all listed here, including the website, access to our infrastructure grant resources page, Map It, which is the application tool, the infrastructure guidance document. And so Leon, I'm going to ask you now if you could paste the application guidance document in the chat right now. If any of you downloaded an earlier version this week, there was one change we made, and that's our new mass.srts email address. So we'll put that up on the screen later, but I just did want to make a note of it in case you downloaded an earlier version this week. So here are some of the links I talked about, our dashboard access to check if you are a partner, as well as the new partner registration. We have two types of grants available within the Safe Routes to School program. Our Signs and Lines grants are reimbursement based and provide up to $6,000 to improve signage and pavement markings within half mile of a partner school. The application period for this year's round closed in mid-September, and we will be awarding 5 grants for the school year. Our infrastructure grants are for much larger projects and span from $200,000 to over $2 million. Since program inception and going back more than 10 years, we've completed 39 Safe Routes to School infrastructure projects. In addition, there are currently 25 projects in progress, including 14 awarded in the 2018-2019 school year and 7 awarded last school year. We do plan to award up to 10 projects for this round of applications. And now I'm going to turn the presentation over to Derek to review eligible applicants and eligible projects. Everything we will review is in the application guidance document. So please make sure you download that from the chat or from the Safe Routes to School website. Okay, Derek.
Thank you, Diane. Appreciate it. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Derek Cravatt from MassDOT's Office of Transportation Planning. I'm the Safe Routes to School Program Coordinator with MassDOT. I'm going to talk a little bit first about eligibility when it comes to both applicants and project types. So first, with regard to applicants, we have 3 overarching requirements for eligibility. First, the school applicant must serve grade K through 8. So this covers all kind of public elementary and middle schools, as well as high schools that do have grade 8 within them, would be considered eligible for the program. Secondly, as Diane mentioned previously, partnership with the Safe Routes to School program is required. So schools must be partners for at least 6 months. And again, you can check the website for any questions on partnership status. And third, the school must receive public funding to be considered eligible. So this covers all, of course, public schools, as well as publicly funded charter schools, which would also be considered eligible to apply for funding through this program. And of course, the schools must be committed to ongoing Safe Routes activities. This is something we do pay attention to as part of the evaluation of applications. There also has to be a municipal co-applicant, which Diane mentioned as well. Typically, we like to see engineering departments or departments of public works or agencies that are responsible for sort of local maintenance of roadways or infrastructure within the community. We also have scoring criteria related to environmental justice. So we do encourage schools that represent diverse communities to apply for infrastructure funding. So with regard to eligible project types, this slide just describes some considerations that we have. So first and foremost, we do need to see that the project will improve safety and or increase the number of children walking and biking to school. So that is the mission of the Safe Routes to School program. We expect to see projects that are sort of in line with that mission. The second sort of check mark here is sort of more of a note on eligibility. The project has to be located within 2 miles of a K through 8 school or school campus. So of course, you know, we need to see the connection between sort of increasing walking and biking to school, and the project can be within 2 miles in order to do that. And thirdly, projects should be within the public right of way or sort of a bicycle pedestrian pathway. So we do look at sort of right-of-way considerations as we review the application, something that, we want to make sure is sort of prioritized as part of that. Is that, there's not going to be major right-of-way challenges associated with the project. K through 8 students, again, must be the primary beneficiaries of the projects, and we do make sure the proposals are all accounting for ADA accessibility as well. So projects that will not be funded, sometimes when talking about eligibility, it's helpful to look at the reverse side as well. So some project types that are not eligible include recurring costs that could include things like pavement maintenance. In the past, we've seen proposals for sort of high amounts of sort of resurfacing work when it comes to pavement. Of course, the sort of focus of the program is on bicycle and pedestrian improvements. So we really want to see that be the sort of bulk of project proposals. Things like travel lane improvements or turning lanes or things of that nature, widening or adding lanes related to improvements that might negatively affect bicycle and pedestrian safety are, of course, not eligible. We also get questions a lot on such sort of school bus improvement projects. Those are not considered eligible. Again, we want the focus of this infrastructure program to be on student walkers and bicyclists, not necessarily on sort of motor vehicle improvements, and that includes school buses. So just some notes there on that side of eligibility as well. So just some sample eligible projects here. So you can see sort of illustrations or photographs. Sidewalk improvement projects are of course considered eligible. That could include sidewalk rehabilitation or sort of new construction when it comes to sidewalks. Traffic calming, so this could include things like sort of refuge islands or sort of center medians that might help slow traffic, crossing improvements, whether that's new crosswalks or sort of repainting crosswalks, raised crosswalks we've seen before, speed tables, things of that nature are considered eligible. Bicycle facilities, new bike lanes, other types of bike infrastructure, whether those are bike signals or bike boxes. We've also seen things like pedestrian hybrid beacons funded through the program. So essentially, if it's going to improve sort of bicycle and pedestrian safety, particularly in areas where that would help children walk and bike to school, the project would be eligible. So just some notes here on project cost. So with regard to what's covered with the grant, it does cover both design and construction, and there is no sort of local match required for the actual sort of capital construction costs of the project. So MassDOT provides the sort of required match for the project, and the federal funding source we use is called Transportation Alternatives Program, or TAP. So it is federal funding combined with the state match. So there's no kind of municipal match required, although the municipality is responsible for costs related to right-of-way or other potential acquisitions or takings on the local level. But with regard to the actual sort of project costs, that will be sort of fully reimbursed. We also, within the application guidance, break up some sample budgets by sort of size of the project. So we have small project budgets at $200,000 or less, medium project budgets between $200,000 and $800,000, and then large project budgets that are kind of between $800,000 to $1.5 million. And the next slide has some examples of these. So a small project might include things like pedestrian ramps or pavement markings or new signage or sort of painting sort of crosswalks, things of that nature. The higher cost items get into things like traffic signal upgrades or new lighting, new traffic signals, things like landscaping or traffic management costs that are associated with that. So this is all included within the application guidance document that's been published to the website. I think that Leon's posted in the chat a couple of times. So again, just want to emphasize this, the sort of grant covers these types of items. Other costs that are associated with the projects that have to do with right-of-way are the responsibility of the municipality or the awardee. There's also, sometimes we get the question of if there are pavement sort of poor poor pavement condition on the road that the project is on, and if that could be funded. There's always opportunities to supplement the funding of the grant if your community would like to maybe resurface the road to support things like new pavement markings, but that may not be covered as part of the grant, especially if it's related to sort of large scale types of resurfacing costs. The grant would pay for the bike and pedestrian improvements, things like this that are included on the slide, but there's always opportunity to supplement that with local sources as well. So I think I'll turn it back to Diane now to talk a little bit about the application process itself.
Great. Thank you, Derek. Let's actually go through the application tool right now. I'll take you through some of those instructions. So the application is available in MAPIT, which is MassDOT's project intake tool. I do have a list of MAPIT account holders, so please reach out to me if you need to know who has an account in your municipality. But if you would like to create an account, you know you don't have one, there's a link here. It's also on our website to create an account. Once you have those account details, you can go to the MAPIT main webpage. Again, these links are all in the guidebook and on the website, and log in with your credentials. The first thing that you're going to see is a screen asking you to select your workflow. So you are going to choose local aid. Once you select local aid, the grant type window pops up and you will select SRTS for Safe Routes to School. The start of the application process includes entering some basic project information, starting with the applicant information, like project name, date, municipality, and school district. Municipal contact information is next, followed by the scope of work. This should be a very brief description, something like installing 200 feet of sidewalk along Maple Avenue from Elm to Pine, installing pedestrian warning flasher assembly at Maple and Pine, and installing new ADA ramps and crosswalks at all 3 intersections. So very brief. The next thing you'll be asked to enter is the desired start date for construction. As you'll see in the timeline towards the end of the presentation, these projects take a bit of time to start. So you can either put the date of the application in this section, or if you know you have complementary projects starting around a certain time, put in that date for the date that it requests. At the end of this section, you will click Save and Next to go to the following page. Keep in mind that you can always save your work and come back to it throughout the application process. The next section is called sketching. So the steps for this, as you'll see in number 1, is selecting the polygon sketching tool shown at the bottom of the screen. When you're drawing a polygon, you're going to draw it around the project area to show the limits of the project. So if you've never been in MAPIT before to do this, you're going to use your left mouse click to add the vertices and double click at the end to finish once you've completed setting the project limits. Please ensure that the project limits are mapped as closely to the project as possible. The polygon should only encompass areas where infrastructure project work is intended to take place. So once the polygon is drawn, a window to select routes, you can see it sort of in the center of the screen there, will appear, and it displays all the roads that intersect within the polygon. You can uncheck any roads you don't wish to include in this window. I think this is new since the last time we ran, we accepted applications in MAPIT. So you can uncheck roads you don't wish to include. When you feel comfortable with the list that's on your screen, you click Select to continue the project. Make sure it is within 2 miles of a public K-8 school, and click Save and Next to move to the next step. The only action required in step 4, which is geoprocessing, is to click here to run geoprocessing. This application will automatically intersect the project polygon with pre-configured layers that can be used during our application review. Text will begin to appear beneath the click here to run geoprocessing button, and this process can take 1 to 2 minutes or longer depending on your connection speed. Intersecting layers will be highlighted in yellow, as you can see on the screen. When the geoprocessing is complete, the page will say succeeded along with the time it took. And that's in point number 2 there. Along the bottom of the geoprocessing window, hit Save and Next once geoprocessing is complete. The next section of questions is the bulk and the remainder of the application. We'll go over each section in the following slides. You can see detailed instructions for each of the questions in the application guidance document. Questions 1 through 17 ask more details about the school and the municipal applicant. For the school applicant, provide a name of someone at the school that will be a point of contact for the project. This may be a school principal, another school administrator in a leadership role, or someone who has contact with an administrator at the school. This person may also be the main proponent of the project. For the municipal co-applicant, the municipality must not only be aware of the proposed project, but be in full support of it. Each application must be associated with a municipal government, and you have to provide the name of that municipal co-applicant. This person should have decision-making authority for local projects and preferably work within the department responsible for maintaining the infrastructure. Although the appropriate co-applicant will vary from municipality to municipality, the most successful projects we've seen have buy-in from the Department of Public Works, city or town engineering. So those are really who we're looking to see as main contacts. For advice on who to list as a co-applicant, definitely reach out to your town's DPW, engineering, or any related municipal department that does similar roles and responsibilities. Other offices and officials like Board of Selectmen, Town Manager, Mayor's Office, Planning Department, they can all be included on the application, but priority will be given to applications with support from municipal departments that are directly responsible for maintaining the infrastructure. If the proposed project is selected to advance, the co-applicant will be contacted to ensure support of the project. In part 1, we gather more detailed information about the school. You must answer whether the school is in a designated Title I, the percentage of students considered economically disadvantaged, basic enrollment information, and information about how students travel to and from school. Many of these questions will require the applicant to work directly with somebody from the school or school district so they can gather details about busing, student distances to school, and mode share. If your school doesn't have mode share data, you can conduct a hand tally survey, parent guardian survey. You also have the option of leaving this section with zeros if you don't know the information or you don't have time for the survey. In part 2, we get very specific about the project details. When describing the project, please be as specific as possible, including road names, project limits, and proposed improvements. Briefly note the identified issues that you're going to be addressing with these improvements. This description allows for 500 words, and we are very clear in our guidance document to say you are not permitted to say see attached documents. I'm going to put that in quotes, see attached documents. You should be able to succinctly describe the project within 500 words in the MAPIT application. In order to find out if the proposed project is on an existing biking or walking route, you can also reference potential for everyday biking and potential for walkable trips. Those links are also in the application guidance document. This section also allows you to submit photos and renderings of project areas. Please only submit photos and drawings here. There is another section for you to upload other documents. Questions in part 3 focus on the problems, the needs, and the opportunities. You'll be asked to detail the main objective of the project, for example, lack of sidewalks or pedestrian facilities, and you're going to visit MassDOT's impact portal to gather information for this section. You can find out more about safety and the history of crashes on the project site. You can also consult local police reports or go to MassDOT's interactive crash map. Links for all of these can be found in the guidance document. Community support and existing plans that support this project are also part of section 3 or part 3. In addition, we do ask for a draft cost estimate. You can utilize the sample budgets to help customize a budget for your project, and it must be attached as a PDF in the last question, which is question 40. The budget and other supplemental documents like letters of support from the municipality and other stakeholders can also be attached in question 40. Once all questions are answered, you can click the Submit for Acceptance button. Make sure you've submitted everything before you click the button. You will not be able to make changes once it's been submitted. You will receive a confirmation email from MassDOT as a receipt of your application. Please note that the Safe Routes program does have a new email address at MassDOT, so you can see it here in the sample email. I'll also share it at the end of the presentation. I'm now going to pass this back to Derek to discuss the next steps after the application is submitted.
Great, thanks, Diane. So after the applications are submitted, our project selection committee, which is comprised of folks and staff from across MassDOT and the Safe Routes to School program team, will review the applications, and the selected applications will be notified, at which point those that are selected will proceed to steps 6 and 7, which are the project need form and the project scope. So for those that may be familiar with the MassDOT project development process, this is the same process that you would use for any other federal aid project with MassDOT. I wanted to say before getting into these steps that if a project is not selected, it will still be saved within our MapIt system and can be resubmitted during the next application period. So they're automatically saved for future use. I did see a question come in on the chat as to whether previously awarded projects would sort of preclude them from being considered. And I would say no. If your community has received a grant before, that does not preclude you from consideration as part of this process. And just wanted to say we are monitoring the chat. We will certainly get to the questions that are coming through. But for the project need form, this is a MapIt form used for all state and federal projects across the Commonwealth, federally funded projects. It provides preliminary information about the proposed project. So sort of a high level look at the need for the project and the sort of transportation barrier or problem that it addresses. The local municipality will be sort of responsible for filling out the PNF, although the Safe Routes to School program staff is available, as our sort of the MassDOT folks involved, myself and others from our GIS services group are available to provide assistance with this. The project scope form asks a little bit more detailed questions on things like the roadway type and sort of more engineering focused questions on specifics of the roadway and sort of traffic counts and things of that nature. And again, the municipality will be responsible for this section, although the school may be consulted, but no action is required by the school for the project need form and the project scope form. At this stage, it's mostly with the municipality, whoever the sort of point of contact is to complete these sorts of forms, whether it's Department of Public Works or traffic or engineering departments that would complete this. So once complete, the project scope does get sent to the MassDOT project review committee for their approval, and the project gets entered into MassDOT's project tracking system or project information, project info, and the school and municipalities are notified of the design and construction schedule. So after the projects move to project info, they will no longer appear in MapIt, but they will live within MassDOT's larger project info system. So I'm going to go into the timeline a little bit more, but for now we wanted to just show some screenshots of what the evaluation criteria look like for the applications. These are largely similar to prior years, and this will just give you a sense of what's weighted a certain way. So you can see sort of which areas get prioritized. I'm not going to read through this word for word. This is in the application guidance document, so we encourage everybody to check that out. But just to give some sense of what's included in the criteria for evaluation, this will show you that. So part 1 is like about project description. This is facility location, general information, existing routes. Part 3 is the identification of the problem and need for that, cost estimate, things of that nature. and past involvement. So like Dan has mentioned previously as well, this is actually a formal part of the evaluation process on the prior involvement in the program. And total points sort of would add up to 100 is the sort of total score that a project could receive. So this is a little bit of a more detailed timeline on what to expect. So December 1st is the deadline for applications within MAPIT. We would then convene as a project selection committee. Projects will be selected by January or early February 2022, at which time we would notify all of the applicants either way. And then in February and March, we proceed with scoping meetings and walk audits for the selected projects. April 2022, we will complete our 10% design plan. And again, this is sort of provided as part of the grant. So the Safe Routes to School program team will be providing the conceptual or 10% design plan as part of the grant. In May or June 2022, we will then prepare the project need form and project scope for MassDOT's project review committee. And then in summer or fall 2022, the project would officially get kind of approved by MassDOT and entered into our system. This aligns with our pre-project review committee meeting that happens 2 to 3 times a year. The project then gets to sort of assigned a MassDOT project manager, project number, and a design and engineering firm that's provided through MassDOT is provided to the project to work with the community and the school throughout the remainder of design. At that point, it is a somewhat of a longer term process than some other projects that MassDOT funds. We do go through sort of, because it's federal funding, we need to satisfy all federal requirements related to right-of-way and environmental permitting and sort of the design phases that MassDOT uses for federal funding. So there is what we call a 25 and 75% design submission, typically for Safe Routes to School projects. These are combined, at which point there is a design public hearing at that milestone where there will be sort of a public meeting and opportunity for input. There are also, many opportunities for public input along the way for project development, and we'll work with the communities on that. And then in spring 2024 is sort of the expected time at which the sort of 100% design plans would be ready. Typically, it does take, about 2 to 3 years to sort of complete a design for this kind of project with MassDOT, and then expect to sort of advertise and construct between fall 2025 and early spring 2026. And of course, again, the Safe Routes to School program team will be involved throughout, including the portion of the project that will involve construction to work with the school to mitigate any sort of travel disruptions as a result of the project. That's a sort of high level look at the timeline for the grant.
Great. Thank you, Derek. Before we go into Q&A, I did want to highlight some of our upcoming events. We have our fall forum on October 29th. So it's all things Safe Routes to School. It's fun, quick 30-minute presentations, and you'll learn all about the program. On Wednesday, November 10th, we have our second networking call, and I did mention that before. The topic will be engaging parents and guardians in the Safe Routes program. In late January, we have our webinar for municipalities, and Wednesday, February 2nd is our winter walk and roll day, which is our second flagship day of the school year. So I did see questions coming in through the chat. So Derek, hopefully you're unmuted and we can start working through some of these. I'm going to go to the front of the chat here. Let's see here. Okay, so the first question is about installing air pollution detection devices along, and obviously I think, Derek, you can see this as well. So basically asking if this is something that can be included as part of the grant. So
Sure. Yeah. So yeah. I think, it sounds like a really interesting project. I think this funding program might not be the source for it. I think this program is much more geared toward infrastructure improvements that, are more associated with a MassDOT kind of federally project. So this is something a little bit outside of our normal project development process. So it's sort of the sort of framework that we're working within for the program doesn't line up for things like capital purchases, which is what this kind of sounds like. So although it sounds like an interesting project, it's certainly something that would be valuable. It's sort of, I don't think would be considered eligible for this program.
Thanks, Derek. So David asked, does current SRTS infrastructure grant program differ in any significant way from previous years, particularly in areas like eligible project types, funding amounts, and proximity? I will take a short answer to that and say, it does not differ very much in terms of all of those things that you listed. However, there have been some improvements to map it in terms of the application. The funding amounts have increased a little bit, I would say, Derek, right, to accommodate some of the bike and pedestrian infrastructure requirements through highway design. Proximity to schools is the same. So I can't think of anything else that has changed significantly.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay. Are there rules regarding communities that have ongoing Safe Routes funded projects? Are we eligible for? Okay, so I think you answered that one, Derek, right? Through that, yes, this does not preclude you from submitting an application if you've previously received one. Can we apply to Safe Routes to School and Complete Streets at the same time for the same new school sidewalk to help our chances of one of the programs approving? I believe, Derek, stop me if I'm wrong, that has happened in the past, that we do have schools that submit their to both programs in hopes of upping their chances. And I think that that's fine.
Yes, yeah, we'll coordinate with our Complete Streets program staff throughout and on the project selection committee. If you did submit an application to the tier 3 Complete Streets and it's sort of currently being reviewed, you can certainly submit it to this for projects as well. And we'll coordinate with our Complete Streets team on the funding for it. Yep.
Perfect, thank you. Does this program work with all browsers? And Jose, thank you for chiming in. Google Chrome is preferred, so thank you for that. When will Science Lines grant awards be announced? Well, Derek, I believe, I don't know when we're making public announcements for that. Were we possibly waiting for moving together, I think, for that?
Yes, yeah, I think we'll send out a press release for that probably in November or early December.
Right.
But the timing on that is to be determined, but we will be sending letters to the communities probably. I think I've sent a handful. There will be formal letters sent to communities next week for that program. Okay. So if you were an applicant, you'll be receiving a notice next week.
Okay. And whether or not you applied for Signs and Lines or have received one in the past, that also does not preclude you from applying for this grant. So can you give us an idea of total funds available, as well as break out the number of small, medium, large budget grants that you issue each year? I'll take a stab at this one and I'll have Derek sort of finish this up. So it honestly depends on the projects that come into us. So we look at them all and we try to get a sense of a good mixture of all of them to fit within some funding. But it really depends on the types of projects that we get and who applies. We did say that we were looking to award approximately 10 projects this year. So yeah, Derek, I don't know if you want to add anything about the total funds available.
Right, yeah, so that estimate was kind of made based on the amount that we've reserved in our State Transportation Improvement Program, or STIP, which is approximately $10 million for the awards. And we, just given the variation in size, we sort of average that to about $1 million per project, just for a rough kind of budget sense of what to expect. So that's the amount of funding available. And we don't have any sort of strict rules governing how many different size projects we fund. We want to sort of have the flexibility to fund what we feel are the most impactful projects that we receive.
Great, thank you. Evan says, you mentioned that there's an environmental justice scoring component. What about regional equity, areas of persistent poverty, urban rural considerations? Can you share anything on how exactly EJ considerations are judged? Is it binary? Thanks.
So we do have the screenshots of the evaluation criteria. So the formal evaluation criteria include this within the, I think the first part under Title I. So we ask
Yes.
questions related to, whether Title I, if the school is classified as Title I, as an indicator of social equity. We also look at sort of what we call this category here, economically disadvantaged, based on the school's participation in SNAP or TAFDC and other types of social programs. So those are the sort of formal criteria that we look at. But we do definitely take that seriously and prioritize that as part of our review of the applications. And then with regional equity, we do want to make sure that we're mindful of that as well. So we do sort of look at how the sort of potential awards are distributed across the Commonwealth and make sure that we're prioritizing regional equity as well. So that's definitely a consideration for us as we do this.
Evan said, I rephrase my question. Is there a consideration for regional equity? So I think we just did answer that. Yes, we do take that into consideration and try to be fair with how we distribute the funds.
Thanks. And then urban, rural, urban. I didn't hear anything there. Is that kind of done like maybe informally, or?
I would say so. We don't have a score particularly assigned to it, but again, we try to look at a good distribution of projects that address both urban and rural geographies.
Great. Thanks so much.
Craig asks, are there any discussions about creating pilot projects for higher grades with extremely high pedestrian counts?
So the rules governing what's eligible with regard to grades is actually kind of dictated by federal legislation. So the federal Safe Routes to School program originally just involved grades K through 8. So there is language in the new infrastructure bill that's not yet law, but that may pass, that does expand eligibility to high schools. But at this time, our eligibility criteria are still within the parameters of that program, which have it just at elementary and middle schools or schools serving grades K through 8. So that is the sort of regulated area that we're working within. So there are discussions about it, and it may be expanded in the future, but for now, we have to work within that system. So.
Thanks, Derek. Question from Paul: if the project is typically done as a quote unquote book job with specs only and doesn't necessarily need design plans, can that project receive the funds faster?
So there's always potential for projects to, once it's programmed in our STIP budget, which is State Transportation Improvement Program, or the budget with all federal aid projects, depending on the complexity of the project, there is always potential for it to advance more quickly if it's less complex, if it's a smaller project, say within that small budget category. But that depends on the status of other projects within our system and how things might shuffle around from year to year. So I think we can guarantee that the project would be at least, if the design proceeds in accordance with our schedules, that, the project would be completed on the timeline that we provided. But, there's always potential for it to move around, I think, as part of that. And yeah, typically we look at book jobs as like, very easy to fund.
Hey, this is
yeah. Paul
with Uxbridge, town of Uxbridge. I just want to clarify the question. Like, for instance, in my mind, what I'm thinking of is basically just a sidewalk job, which we actually just got a complete streets grants to do sidewalks near schools, and this actually say I got this would allow me to expand the amount of sidewalks that I did. So I'd really just be doing additional sidewalks with the same specs. So in terms, there really isn't a design plan per se to do. It's more just having money to have them do more sidewalks. You know what I mean? So there's not really a design phase to go through. So I didn't know if that changed when the funding could be available.
If I could add something to that too, that, we're not, when this is a Safe Routes to School project, we're not just looking at adding sidewalks or adding, signage or things like that. We take a look at the environment around the school and we determine what works best for a Safe Routes to School project. So we're taking a look at the project with fresh eyes and saying, what can we do around here? So I don't, for us, I think extending a sidewalk, while it may work, we don't go into this thinking we know exactly what we're going to be doing in this area. We come and look at it and say, how does this fit within making it safer for, kids to walk and bike, and add in all of these other components as well.
Okay, so maybe like that's the initial project that we start with, but then there's a process to go through to maybe enhance that project, and that's also part of what you go through.
Could be. I'll have Derek. Yeah.
Yeah, I think in general, what you're describing, it doesn't really mesh with the purpose of this program, which is to sort of have a larger project in mind that can be kind of packaged as a single project and programmed within our larger budget for, the funding that we've kind of reserved for this is in an outer year of our STIP budget. So it's working within that can be challenging to do something like a quick build project. And I just don't want to be disingenuous and say that, we'd be able to do it more quickly when really we do have constraints that are associated with federal funding that do make it somewhat of a longer term process.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
I see William has
problem.
had his hand up patiently. William.
Hi, yeah, thank you, from Boston Transportation Department. So just a quick question. First off, just clarifying whether or not we're even eligible to apply, because the partner school joined in July of this year, so that would not make them eligible under the 6 months by October. Is that correct?
That sounds right. Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like we would need to wait until another year to
Correct.
apply, essentially.
Yep.
Okay. And then so that probably shoots our application then down, but in any case, yeah, I think just an interesting question might raise to raise would be, what if, in our case, we actually have an active design and sort of community process around a school, happens to be called School Street, that has 3 schools on it, one of which is a Safe Routes to School partner, to do safety improvements and traffic calming on that street. And we kind of have 2 concepts. One is like a quick build version, and one would be like, the Lux version where we would do like sidewalk level bike facilities and stuff like that. Would there be a scenario in which, the city could actually do the design and planning process, but use this grant for capital improvements, essentially? Maybe pending approval from MassDOT that, what's being completed is obviously in the spirit of the program and meets the standards and all.
It's definitely a Derek question.
Right. So did you say there's ongoing design work happening kind of around?
Yeah,
the school?
so it's an active
Okay.
project right now, and we're trying to basically, like, we have like sort of a version, like a concept that would be quick build, paint and flex posts, and then like, probably $1 million plus project that would rebuild the entire street, with which, a grant like this would allow us to do, essentially. So
Right. Yeah, we've had projects before that have already had kind of design sets that like maybe an on-call consultant with the city has or town has prepared, and then the conceptual design for this grant would work based off of that initial design. So yeah, we'd certainly be able to accommodate that as long as it goes within the program guidance and everything. Yeah.
okay, sounds good. And just Okay, so this is kind of getting in a weird technicality, but because we have such a density of schools in this neighborhood, I know there is a school that technically is within 2 miles of our project, but it's not the one that this project passes right in front of. Would it still qualify technically, or is that kind of disingenuous if it's?
Is the partner school located within 2 miles of the project?
It would, yeah, it would be. But I mean, the partner school that I was initially thinking of, which has only been a partner since July, is right on the street.
Mhm.
And then several blocks away, there's another school that we could potentially partner with that's been a partner for longer, I saw, but
Say if, I mean, if it can be demonstrated that the proposed improvement would make it safer for kids walking and biking to the partner school, if that case can be made, the eligible school. And then, yeah, there's usually notes in the application about sort of schools that are in close proximity that it may also benefit. So certainly worth noting, I would think.
I think
Yep.
that's a great segue into the next question that says, how do you measure 2 miles? So, you know, a couple different ways, certainly as the crow flies, but also on the walkable, bikeable distance, what's actually can be done on streets. And so in essence, it could be beyond that as the crow flies, but we would look at the direct distance to the school within 2 miles on walkable, bikeable paths. And let's see, if an application is accepted and awarded, however, during the process, later design or public input causes the project not to be supported, are there any consequences for future municipal eligibility for this grant? I say offhand, no, we've had this happen before. And sometimes the winds change, you know, after a few years, and that's okay. And you know, Derek, I think you can answer that for other municipal grants.
Right. Yeah, I think we do factor in, like, oftentimes letters of support are submitted on behalf of the project. And so if the case can be made that the folks that are charged with implementation on the local level are committed to the project, you know, I don't think any prior you know, events might would preclude the project from getting selected, as long as the application seems to be strong and seems to, and the folks seem to be committed to the project. Yeah, I would encourage you to, if that has been an issue in the past, then to just demonstrate how that might have changed or how that might be different, and make sure that letters of support or commitment to the project is documented in the application. I think that's just a best practice for any application, but you know, if you're worried about it, then just something to, you know, make stronger as part of the application.
Jeff asked, how does a project with multiple phases get considered? So just to clarify, would it be that you're submitting for one phase or a certain phase within a multi-phase project? Jeff, I don't know if you take yourself off mute or.
Yeah, hi, thanks for this. This is great. I think it's applying for one phase of a multi-phase was the idea, the question.
Okay. Are the other phases already submitted for like a complete streets or just a municipal project?
Yeah, so this would be the first application that would set off, you know, this series of projects that are not yet funded or applied for yet.
Yeah.
I would think so, as long as it met the criteria of the application and the intention of it being a complete Safe Routes project in it of itself, that phase that you were submitting for meets all of the criteria.
Yeah.
Helpful, thank you.
Lisa says, if the existing project is on a road which includes the creation of a new sidewalk, but the road itself requires reconstruction, would the whole street be the project or just the sidewalk and the town needs to fund road construction? Derek, this is your favorite question to answer.
Yes, yeah, we get this question a lot. And if the pavement condition is kind of substandard or needs attention, you know, that can be considered. I'd say it sometimes what we'll do is include the sort of pavement costs as part of the project as a municipal cost. So if the municipality happens to have funding or can use Chapter 90 on that portion of the project, that can certainly be included in the same design, and the contractor can under the same kind of construction contract, but the source of funding would be different. So we have what we call a non-participating funding agreement with the town, where local funds are used to supplement the project. So for elements like large-scale resurfacing that might be outside of the scope of the Safe Routes to School grant, could still be included as part of the same kind of design set and overall project, but it just has a separate funding source. And small amounts of resurfacing, are certainly, if it's going to support things like a new crosswalk or be really critical to the integrity of the project, can be allowable, but we take that on a case-by-case basis and work with the communities on that. But the intent of the program really is on the active transportation elements, not on things like resurfacing or full depth reconstruction or other types of costs like that. But we would certainly work with you on addressing those kind of like a case-by-case basis. But the intent of the program is again on pedestrian and bicyclist improvements. Yep, go ahead.
So I'd like to expand a little bit on that, Derek, if I may, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like the new approach that the MassDOT is taking in terms of construction and pavement is a really good example of that. Is more like a holistic approach of projects, right? Just like Diane was saying about this particular program. We get to a particular section or a program, and we're looking at everything in there. And specifically with the pavement resurfacing jobs, we come in there and we sort of make sure that we take a look at the other assets around in that area, because we know that it will take us a while to get back there. I mean, we expect these payment jobs to, we won't go back there for another 10, 15 years, hopefully, right? So while we're there, we really take a look at everything else that is around it. And so that is the beauty of this particular application, Map It, right? So all these grants within the workflow within this application allows you to do those specific to those grants. But the application itself allows you to do take a look at what are the opportunities that you may have on that particular project. It allows you to run that project without actually submitting it, just to sort of view what are my opportunities here. So feel free to reach out to us, and I use help like navigating the application, allow you to sort of take a look before you even submit the project and see what the opportunities are.
Thanks, Jose. But yeah, just to be clear, yeah, that the pavement condition might get flagged as a concern as part of the project initiation, but we may not include that as part of the eligible components of the project. So we just want to make that clear, that the focus, to answer the specific question, generally speaking, if it's something like more than $50,000 of pavement costs, then that would be the responsibility of the community. And we want to focus this program on improvements related to multimodal improvements. So
Thank you.
just want to make that clear. Yeah.
Thanks, Derek. The last couple of questions. I know you have a hard stop at 3. Yes, Leon, thanks for posting the webinar PDF in there. And for the question about how do you know if a school partner, if you are already a school partner, in the presentation that Leon put in there, there's a link to go to the Safe Routes dashboard. And if you go to the dashboard and search for your school, if you see it there, it is a partner. Also on the main page of our website, there is a PDF listing of schools by school name and also by municipality. So you can take a look there. You can also reach out to us. There's a few email addresses on the website, and we can look it up for you as well. Marzi says, we are seeking to funding for a rail trail project. Section of the trail provides off-road connection to 2 schools. Would the section connecting 2 schools be eligible for SRTS funding?
Yes. Yeah, I would say yes.
It's definitely in the spirit of what we're trying to accomplish, I think, with a Safe Routes project.
Yep. Yeah, and again, we if it's tip funding through one of our MPOs, we work really closely with our MPOs across the Commonwealth as well, and can coordinate how we might be funding that project as well. We usually go through tip development between January and May. So we'll have project selection for this completed by then. So our MPO partners should know which projects in their region are getting Safe Routes to School program funding and address it during tip development. But yeah, I think if it's not already on a tip and it's not funded and provides that connection, then certainly eligible. Yeah.
Thank you, Derek. I know you have to sign off, so thank you so much. If we did not satisfactorily answer your questions, you can send them to MassDOT SRTS at the email address there. I'm not going to read it off. It is in the guidance document. It's in all of the documents we've pasted in the chat. So please send your emails and questions there and we will get to them. Thank you all so much for attending. We will have this recorded webinar available shortly on our website and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you all.
Everybody.